You remember the moment like a scar. The room went silent the second you spoke because your voice trembled. Their eyes skimmed over you, unreadable, unconcerned. There, in the echo of your own hesitation, you felt the weight of invisibility pressing down. No apology followed, no second chance. Just that hollow pause where your worth was measured and found wanting. They say, power is taken, never given. But what they don't tell you is how it seeps away in fragments. First your confidence, then your voice, then the fear that maybe you don't deserve either. You've replayed that silence 1,000 times, waiting for some fragment of comfort that never came. This isn't about healing that wound. It's about deciding that silence will never own you again. You think transformation arrives in moments of triumph, but real change often sneaks through an empty room, through the echo of footsteps walking away, through a stifled question you never dared ask. The truth you've avoided is this: they didn't break you because they were strong. They broke you because you let them. Imagine a reflection that shows no mercy. You standing calm, unmoved by bruises they never saw. You leaning into the void of their indifference until it trembles. You learning to feed on the refusal of their approval. Here, at this edge, you discover something far more potent than their praise: your own refusal to need it. If you've ever felt the sting of being dismissed, if you've ever craved respect you couldn't demand, you're already here. Subscribe now and join a conversation that strips away soft lies so you can be forged in ruthless clarity. They leaned in close once, words dripping with faux concern, and you flinched. You felt the pulse in your throat, every beat a knell, reminding you of your own fragility. Yet you remember the moment you realized the raw truth. They weren't trying to help, they were setting a trap. Their kindness was a blade, honed on your doubt. You felt the twist in your gut, the slow coil of resentment you'd hidden beneath polite nods. In that instant, you tasted the sweet relief of clarity. They had no power over you except the power you surrendered. You'd handed them the key to your own restraint, locked yourself in a cage of second guessing. And they'd laughed, soft and satisfied, at how easily you complied. So you stopped apologizing for your silence. You let your face slip into a mask of cold observation, waiting. When they spoke again, you heard the tremor in their confidence, the same quiver you once felt. You understood then that authority is not in the volume of your voice, but in the stillness behind it. Presence is measured not by how loudly you declare yourself, but by how deeply you press into the space they thought was theirs. They called you distant, accusing you of indifference. But indifference was a shield, not a weakness. You learned to let their insults fall around you like dry leaves, harmless debris of their own insecurity. And with each barb you refused to catch, you sank deeper into a quiet conviction. Your value needed no echo. Remember the moment you stopped searching for approval in their eyes. You were sitting alone, back turned to the mirror, listening to the hollow echo of your own breathing. You felt an unfamiliar pulse, a low hum of command, resonating beneath your skin. Your bones whispered the same truth. You have always been enough, no justification required. In that hush, you discovered the art of detachment. It's not cruelty, it's clarity in its purest form. To disengage from the chaos they spin is to reclaim the calm at the center of their storm. They'll strike, they'll bait, they'll provoke, because they believe chaos is their dominion. But chaos obeys a single law. Whoever stands unmoved becomes its master. Imagine the next encounter. You sit across from them, shoulders loose, eyes unblinking. They come armed with old accusations, replayed like a broken record. You let the record spin until it falters, until they cough and hesitate. In that fracturing, you step forward, soft but insistent, a silhouette of unshakable resolve. No words needed, just a glance that says, "I know what you want, and I will not be that person again. They'll scramble for control, the pitch of their voice will rise, their sentences will stammer. But you will remain, a study in stillness, the gravity pulling everything back into order. Watch as they shrink, as their arguments collapse under the steady weight of your indifference. They believed they could break you because you never broke them before. Now, you break them with absence. The absence of reaction, the absence of fear, the absence of doubt. You reflect on every time you worshipped at the altar of their approval, every text unanswered, every meeting dismissed, every invitation ignored. You see the pattern. Your longing was their currency. And now, you've become the creditor who calls in the debt. They owe you respect. They owe you acknowledgement. But you will collect on your own terms. Here, in this moment, you stand beyond apology. Apologies belong in the realm of regret. You are past regret. You are the calm thunder that follows a storm of insults. You are the silent verdict that rings louder than any plea. You are the mirror they feared, reflecting every lie they told themselves. They watched you stand your ground once, arms folded, as their accusations trailed off into uneasy silence. You didn't shout. You didn't defend. You simply allowed the space between words to stretch until they collided with their own uncertainty. In that electric void, you discovered a new edge. Power lives in absence, not presence. You remember how it felt the first time you weaponized calm. Your heart beat slower than theirs, the rhythm of your breath a metronome to their rattled cadence. Anger is a fire they expect you to feed. Instead, you cooled the blaze with detached observation. Every steady inhale an act of defiance. They leaned forward, searching for the spark they so desperately craved, and found nothing but a mirror reflecting their own desperation back at them. Their resentment flared like dry kindling. They accused you of being unfeeling, of hiding behind a mask of indifference. Yet indifference is not emptiness. It's the fortress of self-possession. Within those walls, you learned to appreciate the weight of your own conviction. You didn't need to justify your stillness. It was the proof. They had nothing to dismantle, because you refused to give them anything to dismantle. Each time they tried the same old tactics, shame, guilt, pity, you felt a cold smile form at the corner of your lips. You remembered the first time someone told you, "You're too cold." You realized then that coldness is a compliment. It means you cannot be controlled by emotion. It means you have become the observer of every calculated move, immune to their games. They call it cold because they fear the absence of their own leverage. You once believed humility was a virtue. Now you see humility as a vulnerability when misaligned with self-respect. You let humility fall away like dead skin. You stand unclothed in your own authority, every flaw exposed, every scar a testament to battles survived. They wonder what grants you that unapologetic posture. They forget that nothing is more intoxicating than someone who refuses to apologize for their existence. In your solitude, you forged a silent doctrine. Never react until you have observed every variable. Let them reveal themselves in flawed gestures, every twitch, every stammer, every ill-conceived apology. Each one is a confession, a blueprint of their own insecurities. You read them like an open ledger, and when you finally choose to speak, your words land with surgical precision, cutting through their defenses before they even realize the wound. You think back to the moment you stopped fearing the chaos in their eyes. You were alone, walking down an empty street at dusk, the horizon bleeding color as if the sky itself was wounded. You felt a surge of clarity. The world does not crave your chaos. It craves your consistency, your unwavering center. You vowed then that nothing, no plea, no provocation, would ever sway your core again. They'll test you. They always do. They bombard your fortress with emotional artillery, hoping to breach one weak point. But you have studied those patterns, traced their movements, anticipated their strategies. You learned to treat each rhetorical missile as a harmless projection. You watch them burn against your armor of indifference, and you feel no triumph, only the serene knowledge that you remain unshaken. Now imagine the next confrontation. They come armed with new lies, rehearsed in the dark corners of their doubt. You give them no ammunition. Your silence is a void that consumes their words. When you finally look up, they find themselves gazing into eyes that have no fear, no regret, no desire for reconciliation. In that gaze, they see the end of their dominion. This is not about becoming ruthless. It's about refusing to be ruled by fear. It's about standing on the battlefield of emotion without ever shedding a drop of your own blood. They call you ruthless because you won't bleed. They call you unfeeling because you feel too deeply to let them choose your wound. Here, at the apex of detachment, you understand a final truth. Power is not seized in grand gestures. It's claimed in the quiet moments when you decide not to reply, when you choose your silence over their noise, when you watch them unravel and feel nothing but unshakable resolve. You've watched them circle, each accusation a predator sizing you up, convinced they can draw blood. But blood never came. They miscalculated your constitution when they unleashed betrayal as though it were a weapon. You felt nothing but an ironic tingle like ice against a burn, because you understood. Betrayal only wounds if you still believe in their allegiance. There was a moment, after their knife slipped between your ribs metaphorically. Of course, you found yourself alone in a dim hallway, fluorescent lights humming overhead. You remember the hollow echo of your own steps. Somewhere in that emptiness, you discovered a kernel of something unexpected: relief. The relief of knowing there was nothing left to lose. They had already peeled away your illusions. What remained was raw, undeniable self-possession. In that rawness, you forged a new pact. Never grant another the privilege of defining your reality. Reality is yours to shape. They will present you with mirrors smeared in their own contempt, demanding you recognize the cracks they see. Refuse. Smile into that cracked glass. Let their reflection shatter against the wall. You are not the fractured image they want you to be. You are the sculptor who commands the marble. You felt the first tremor of true power when you stopped seeking closure. They left you with questions, dozens of them, each tethered to a past you could no longer afford to revisit. You realized the only closure you needed was the finality in your own mind. You turned away from their half-finished apologies and closed the ledger. You did not burn their letters. You simply folded them back into silence. Silence is not void. It's an amplifier. When you hold your tongue, your presence swells to eclipse their words. You felt this in the boardroom once, when a colleague launched a veiled attack on your competence. Everyone watched, waiting for you to sputter an excuse. You inhaled the stillness. Your chest expanded. Your gaze remained unmoving. The room shrank around them as they realized they had nothing, no proof, no charge, no substance. You nodded once, crisply, and turned back to your work. They remember that moment. They call it intimidation. But intimidation is merely the byproduct of someone who refuses to be intimidated. Your calm became the blade that cut their momentum. They stumbled over their next words, and the opportunity was gone. No victim, no martyr, only the quiet reclamation of space that was yours all along. In the aftermath, you didn't celebrate. Triumph is a fleeting taste, soon soured by expectation. Instead, you tightened your jacket, adjusted your collar, and walked on. You carried that moment like a secret, a quiet engine humming beneath every interaction, and they felt its pull, even when you weren't in the room. You recall how it felt when someone asked, late one night, "Are you ever afraid to lose control?" You thought of every calculated move, every withheld word, every silent witness you'd become, and then you answered, in your head, "I'm more afraid to surrender it." Fear is their last currency. When you reject their markets, they collapse. Now, imagine facing the next storm of manipulation. They strike with guilt. "After all I've done for you?" They strike with pity. "I just want to help." They strike with power. Remember who holds the cards here. But you stand as if carved from stone. Their words ricochet off your armor of detachment. There is no purchase point. Only your composure, magnified. Within that composure lives something darker than rage, a patient clarity. You neither rush nor delay. You wait for the exact moment they become fully revealed. Every lie they speak, every tremor in their voice, you catalog. You learn them as you would learn the patterns of an enemy general. When you choose to strike, it will be with such precision that they'll question whether they ever struck at all. You once believed confrontation required violence, shouting, walls rattling, egos clashing in spectacle. Now you know the truth. The most devastating confrontation is a whisper at the right moment. A single syllable that lands so soft, so unexpected, it shatters their confidence like glass. They won't see the crack until it's too late. You don't seek revenge. You seek finality. Let them carry their broken illusions forward into every future encounter. Let them wonder which reflection of you they'll face next. The silent sentinel, the unwavering judge, the ghost of their past mistakes. Each aspect a testament to your unbreakable covenant with yourself. This is the apex of inner sovereignty. To make every confrontation an exhibition of your calm dominion. To let authority seep from your silence. To allow their doubts to become your weapon. You achieve this not by forcing them into submission, but by forcing them to confront their own impotence. They will whisper your name in corridors, half scared, half intrigued. And that whisper is your triumph. Not because it demands attention, but because it commands respect. The respect that no plea could ever earn. You remember the first time you realized power isn't in their roar, but in your silence. They struck with their loudest accusation yet, words hurled like grenades. You felt the blast in your chest, but you didn't flinch. You let their fury dissipate in the empty space between your eardrums until it was nothing but static. In that static, you found your signature. Unassailable calm cloaked in the promise of retribution. They could neither see nor anticipate. They thought they'd seen every card in your hand. Then you learned to play your next move in shadows. You mastered the art of omission, removing every reaction, every flicker of doubt, until they were forced to reveal themselves in the dark. You watched them grope for meaning in the silence you crafted. Each gesture a confession of their own desperation. They tried to bait you with pity. "I didn't know you'd take it so hard." But you offered no reply. Their words hung in the air, unclaimed. Nothing punishes a manipulator more than a void they cannot fill. You feel their disappointment pulse through the room, like a low hum that you've tuned to your advantage. Once, a friend accused you of turning cold after betrayal. They said warmth would heal better than ice. You pondered their remark as you walked under street lamps flickering in dusk's half-light. You realized warmth is a currency, and you had spent yours recklessly. You decided then that emotional austerity was your truest wealth. No one could bankrupt you if you never traded in raw vulnerability again. They will offer you the gift of reconciliation, soft words, tentative laughter, the illusion of peace. Do not accept. Peace is a luxury you earn through silence, not a souvenir they toss between grudged apologies. Let them clutch their olive branch in trembling hands. Their fear of your indifference will be a weight they can't bear. You recall the boardroom again, how you turned away from the murmurs that trailed you. You didn't need to confront them. You needed to outlast them. Time is the ally of the unmoved. You let a full minute of silence pass before you spoke just one sentence, precise and cold. Proceed when you're ready. Their momentum faltered. They paused, rechecked their projections, and realized you had all the time in the world. In private, you catalog their tactics. The guilt trips, the sob stories, the smug superiority. You file each under a mental dossier, labeled and dated. You study them, not to react, but to anticipate. The next time they launch the same old assault, you will be ready with an absence so complete, it will feel like gravity, inescapable, inevitable. Feel the power in knowing that every word you withhold is a decision of conquest. Every breath you steady is a declaration of sovereignty. They will question your humanity, confuse your restraint for apathy. Let them. They will never understand that restraint is the greatest cruelty you can wield against those who live off your reaction. Soon, you'll stand before them one last time. You won't need a speech. Your posture, unbroken and unbowed, will deliver every verdict. They'll search your face for mercy and find only the hard edge of someone who survived by refusing to beg for survival. They'll know in that instant that they lost far more than respect. They lost the right to your attention. And with that, you will turn away. Not in anger, not in apology, but in finality. Their world will shrink to the size of your absence. They'll whisper of you as a ghost they once haunted, never quite exorcised. That whisper is your victory. They offered you one last apology, soft and hollow, as if remorse could stitch the rift they tore open. You listened, arms at your sides, heart steady, not because you'd hardened beyond feeling, but because you'd learned that closure lives in your own verdict, not theirs. You thanked them in your mind and let the silence stretch until it folded back on itself, a final curtain dropping on every performance they ever demanded. In that quiet, you recognized an unspoken lie, that you needed their forgiveness to move on. You didn't. You had already moved. You turned from them not in anger, but in the calm certainty of someone who has reclaimed every shard of their broken conviction. Behind you, their world contracted to the size of the void you left. They will search for you in familiar haunts, old conversations, half-finished apologies, the echo of your absence. They will find nothing but distance, and in that distance, they will confront the truth they never dared admit. They never owned you. Power isn't taken in crowds or proven in noise. It is claimed in the solitary decision to no longer recoil from betrayal, to sever every cord of approval that tethers you to their chaos. Here, at the end of this reckoning, you stand alone and undisputed, the final arbiter of your own worth. If you've ever felt the sting of being dismissed, if you're ready to rule your own silence like a blade, subscribe and comment the moment you realized you'd never be owned again.